Listen, I want to give a shout out to Alignable. Alignable is a platform that I've been on for a while, but to be honest, I didn't really use it much until this last year, and then I really started to see the opportunities. So when Alignable presented the opportunity for Boss Academy to become one of their community partners, it was something I definitely had to jump on, and we've just been really grateful. We're building out a nice community on Alignable that complements our mastermind community that lives outside of Alignable. So anyway, thank you all for being here today. So today I'm going to ask a few things. I'm going to ask that you be ready to take some notes. There's going to be a lot that I'm going to share that will make a big impact on you if you want to become better at engaging. A lot of us get on Smart Connects and other networking opportunities. We make some new connections, but we don't necessarily take those to the point where they become a relationship, or if we do, we don't convert enough of those. So today I'm going to provide some insights and hopefully solutions that are going to help really change the way that you see networking. So I'm going to ask you to take some notes, and there's going to be a couple of points where I'm going to say, hey, you know what? Take a screenshot. This is going to be valuable information for you later, so we'll get to those points later. But I want to start off, there's a phrase that I love: the same sun that warms the butter hardens the clay. Often, we're presented the same information as somebody else, but what we do with it might be much different. You see some people out there flourishing, and they're making a big impact in the way that they're making connections, and they make it seem so easy. Whereas we get out there, we think we're doing the same thing, but we're seeing different results. So my goal is to provide some opportunities for you today to maybe even the playing field and put yourself in a position where you can become better at mastering engagement. So when we think about networking, there's almost unlimited opportunities online to network today. On Alignable itself, Smart Connects on a daily basis. There's no limit to the number of networking opportunities. They're everywhere. But here's the big question. Are you capitalizing? I would argue that most people go to networking events, they make some new connections, but are they really building a business from it? Are they finding themselves facing some frustration? There's some statistics I want to share that I think will really help bring some visibility into what's really happening in the marketplace. Now, 48% of professionals say they keep in touch with their network. It's not a bad number, but that means that 52% of people aren't keeping in touch. And 38% say it's hard to keep in touch due to lack of time. Now, arguably, is it lack of time or is it lack of priority? Maybe we're facing frustration and we give up on keeping in touch because it just doesn't seem to pay off. There's some real networking challenges that take place, but in terms of sales, in terms of converting people from a prospect to a customer, there's some sales statistics that really stand out. 7 to 13 touch points to convert a prospect to a customer. That means a touch point could be an email, a webinar, it could be a phone call, a meeting, some sort of connection where you're actually making an outreach to this person and they're receiving it. 7 to 13 opportunities to go from prospect to customer. And if 80% of all sales require at least 5 phone calls or meetings on average, that means a lot of effort goes into following up and building real trusted relationships. Arguably, though, I think most people fall short. Most people give up after 1 or 2 attempts. This means they're always going after that new connection. With all the unlimited opportunities to connect through networking, are we spending more time on building new relationships than focusing on those that are actually going to give us the opportunity to really build our business? Fortune is in the follow-up. Now, there's some real challenges that take place in networking. So, I'm going to define networking, obviously looking at Smart Connects, but going to live networking events, meeting people in person, whatever format, it doesn't really matter. If you're meeting people through networking, it's a great opportunity. However, there's often some frustrations that come with follow-up. We meet somebody at a networking event, man, they are just showing us interest. They seem excited about us. They seem to really like us. They even tell you, hey, give me a call when you get an opportunity. Let's schedule another meeting. This is exciting. They even said they might have a project for us. Wow, I can't believe this. I just met this person. They already have something. And guess what? They're a decision maker. I'm sure every one of you in some capacity has experienced this. You meet people, they seem to really connect with you. It seems like a great opportunity. They even say all the right things. Man, this is great. Let's connect further. They get busy, you get busy. You do your outreach after the networking and you say, "Hey, this is something I really want to take this relationship somewhere." Now all of a sudden they're not taking your calls. They're ignoring your emails. Now all of a sudden you get in touch with them, you finally talk to them. "You know what, Paul? I've got to run this by my team." "Wait a minute, I thought you were the decision maker." Now all of a sudden you've got a team to run this by? "I'm not sure I understand what's happening here." "You know what, Paul? We're happy with our current supplier." Wow. You know, often we meet people through networking and they're a captive audience. We have their attention, we have their time, but life gets in the way. Their business has other challenges. You're not the priority you were when you were on that networking call with them. And sometimes we end up feeling like networking is just simply a waste of time. But is it a waste of time? Actually, I think there's so many opportunities. Fortune is in the follow up, but sales is hard. Sales is a competition. And really, sales is filled with lots of hurdles. Now, wait a minute. Are they really hurdles? After all, if you've gone through any kind of sales training, you've gone through any programs, it seems so easy. All we got to do is find the customers, show a few benefits. Hey, let's overcome some of those objections before they bring them up. This is great. This is so easy. Now all we have to do is close the sale. Unfortunately, it's really never that easy. In most cases, I would argue that many of you have been misled. However, there's a secret weapon. We've all been told we have that tool. It's the most important tool in our disposal. All we have to do is memorize our elevator pitch. That's right. That 60-second commercial that allows us to tell them how great we are, how much we can do for them. Man, this is how we're going to actually grow our business. We've got this elevator pitch that tells them everything they need to know. Well, at the base of an elevator pitch, it's simply a sales message. Jeffrey Gitomer, who wrote the Little Red Book of Selling and the Sales Bible, he likes to say that people hate to be sold, but they love to buy. I actually have a little different spin on that. I like to say that if you're telling, you're selling, and nobody wants to be sold. And an elevator pitch, in its raw concept, is simply that. It's a message where you're telling. It's not engaging. I'm not saying that there aren't powerful elevator pitches. I'm not saying that you don't need a condensed message about your business. I'm just saying that it's not a powerful sales tool that many of you have been led to believe. But what if I told you there's a new way of thinking of things, a new perspective? We're going to say it's an old spin, but a new perspective, an area where there's just unlimited possibilities. Now, I've coached countless number of sales teams. I've worked with sales leaders from all over the world. I've managed international sales team. I don't say these things to brag, but there are two areas where I think that people that stand out as really good at engaging, they have maybe a level of expertise or a level that stands out above others. One is they're really good at putting themselves in the shoes of the person on the other side of the table. You can call it empathy, you can call it sympathy, you can call it just understanding that someone else's challenges is an opportunity for you to provide solutions that can help make their life richer and in turn help you grow your business. But there's another area that it can't necessarily be taught, but I think you can learn to do it over time, and that's be curious. If we're curious about the people we're working with, we want to get to know them, we want to understand them. This opens up a door of possibilities that would never be opened otherwise. See, I argue that curiosity always helps you move forward. If you really care, if you're really curious, you're inquisitive, it gives you an opportunity to build trusted relationships. It gives you an opportunity to understand where their fears lie, where their challenges lie, and then the solutions you provide can help serve them. So I said that there was going to be a little effort to do some work. I want you to take some notes. On the next slide, I'd like you to write down these 4 areas. Now, we're not going to take time to go through and and work on these right now, but I want you to write down these 4 areas because this is going to be something that you're going to want to do on your own. Let's do some important work here. So I want you to think about, what are your clients' biggest fears? I didn't say what are their problems that you're solving. I didn't say what are your solutions you're providing. But what are their biggest fears? What are some of the things that are really holding them back? This is not always the easiest question to answer, but if you can get to the base of this, you have an opportunity to connect with them at a very emotional, and I'll say primal level. So what problems do you solve? So if your solutions don't address their fears, maybe it's time to go back to the drawing board. Often we fall in love with our own offering, our services, our features, our benefits, and we think that we're serving at a high level, and we don't understand why people aren't buying. But people buy on emotion almost every time. And so if we can address their fears, their struggles, we have an opportunity to serve. Another area, what does an ideal client gain from us? Now, these are 3 really important questions. And if you can create a list around these 3 questions, you've got an opportunity to make some real headway. Their fears, the problems we solve, and then what does an ideal client gain from us? Now, if we're not addressing that first point for them, maybe we're missing the mark. So let's look at this differently. Let's look at, what does success look like? First of all, what's success look like to us? Of course, maybe winning a new client. But what does it look like to them? Are you helping them with those sleepless nights? Are you helping them face some of those hurdles that they really are struggling with? See, at the end of the day, people buy on emotion. Fear, it's a primal trigger. It's primal in nature. So I'm going to ask you, let's get primal. So I love this picture, but primal triggers, they engage. You know, at the root of everything, things in us are primal that make us make buying decisions, the emotions, the fear, the struggles. So let's look at what some primal triggers are. Emotion, scarcity, urgency, social proof, belonging, reciprocity, fear, and authority. Now, there's 2 other areas that I think, in terms of primal triggers, are things that everybody can relate to, and they drive so much opportunity to engage. If you can become better at telling stories, that's a powerful primal trigger. But there's one other area that I think stands out above all else. And if you can master this, you have an opportunity to truly engage. That's asking the right questions. So I want to step back for a moment before I move on. And I mentioned networking. So I talked about networking events. I talked about some of the hurdles and the challenges that come from networking. Probably 5 years ago, I was working with a company here in the local Dallas area that they had a very experienced sales team. And one of their top executives had gone to a networking event in Las Vegas. And I asked her how the event went, and she says, "It went great. I had an amazing conversation." And I said, "What do you mean conversation?" I said, "You went to this networking event?" And she goes, "Yeah." She goes, I spoke with this guy all night. I said, "It was a 2-hour-long networking event." He said, "You spoke to one person?" She goes, "Yeah, but it was huge, and it's going to really lead to a lot of opportunities." That conversation with her, he spent 2 hours with her talking about all those things that I mentioned. He was interested in working with her. He had opportunities to follow up with her. And she had such a great connection with him. And I said, "You know what? I hate to tell you this, but that's never going to go anywhere." And she was really upset with me. And I said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well," I said, "you spent 2 hours talking to this person when they were a captive audience at this event. That time at that event was spent with one person when you could have met maybe 10, 20 people." And she says, "Yeah." She goes, "But it's going to lead to something." 6 months later, nothing happened. A year later, she reached out to me and she said, "You know what? You were right. What should I have done?" And I said, "Well," I said, "based off the conversation you told me," I said, "you had him talking a lot about your business and you spent a lot of time telling him what you could do for him." I said, 2 things. I said, "I would have spent less time. I would have scheduled with him outside of that event, and I would have done a better job of asking questions." See, she wasn't in control. Questions put us in a position where we're in control. I argue that questions are so powerful. Questions drive engagement. Yeah, they attract attention. They help us engage in dialogue, and they get them talking. They uncover pain points. We learn what makes them tick from questions. We build trust, drive loyalty, differentiate. But above all, it allows us to control the conversation. See, questions, they truly give us an edge. And most people miss out on the opportunity because they spend so much time talking about what can I do for you instead of how can I help you address your issues by uncovering what your real problems are. However, if you leverage questions, and maybe you're somebody who's really good at asking questions, there are some traps. There's some traps that actually can be avoided. Now, I'm sure you've heard the discussion in many instances and many forums about closed-ended questions versus open-ended questions. Closed-ended questions are those yes/no questions. In some cases, closed-ended questions can create massive doubt in the mind of the buyer. Let's say you ask a simple question. Are you happy with your current supplier? If they say yes, where do you take that conversation? See, these are called trap questions. Trap questions absolutely lead you nowhere. It doesn't mean you shouldn't use yes/no questions, but you have to be careful. Are you asking a question that's a dead end, or are you asking a question that allows you to really control the conversation? There's another trap that I think many people get into when it comes to asking questions. They ask the question, and they're so busy getting the next thing out of their mouth that they forget to listen. Active listening, it's an opportunity that you will never regret if you take time to shut up and listen. So I'm going to tell a quick story. So years ago, I was working for a company that was in the market research space, and I had an opportunity with a client on the West Coast. And I had a manager that was an amazing sales leader, and he decided he was going to come in and join me on this meeting. There was a large project that I wanted to get from these people. They were working with another vendor, and I knew that if I could figure out who that vendor was and where they were serving that account, that I had a chance to win that business. So I prepared. I went in with I did all my research, all my homework. I knew the questions I was going to ask, and if the opportunity presented itself, I was going to ask that question. Well, sure enough, we get to the point in the meeting where it's the perfect time to ask the question. I asked her who was serving that account and where the work was being done. Next thing I know, I'm out in the parking lot talking to my manager, and I'm just bouncing all over the place. I'm so excited. Great meeting. And he looks at me and he goes, Paul, he says, when you asked that question, what was her answer? I said, you know what? I said, I was so excited about asking that, and I asked it, and she didn't answer it. I was a little frustrated. And he goes, no, Paul, she answered it. You just weren't listening. It was like a huge gut punch. It was probably one of the best lessons I learned early in my sales career, because at that point I realized that I spent so much time talking, I wasn't listening. I wasn't tuning in. It was a missed opportunity. So let's look at 4 question types that really do drive engagement. So over the next few minutes, I'm going to share 4 different concepts, and I want you to write down these different areas. And if you have time, maybe even come up with a question or two that you can leverage for yourself. And I'm going to have some slides that you can do some screenshots on. So be ready to take a screenshot. So let's look at the first one. Often in conversations, I mentioned that you can control conversations with questions. We want to know where we're going. We want to control the conversation, but we don't want to be doing all the talking. We need to get them engaged. So maybe we ask questions that we already know the answer to, but if we get them to answer and interact, it gives us an opportunity to take the question further and take the conversation further, and gives us an opportunity to get them really engaged. These are what's called leading questions. Now, leading questions are questions that they put you in control, but it also allows them to feel heard, allows them to feel like you really understand their business. So an example of a leading question might be, how are your suppliers' shipping delays impacting your production schedule? I want you to think about your own business and just take a minute. See if you can come up with a leading question on the spot here. If not, you can always come back and revisit this, but how are your suppliers' shipping delays impacting your production schedule in your business? What's an example of a question you might know the answer to, but with them engaged, them answering that question, it gives you permission to talk about your products. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. You can always come back and revisit this. But on the next slide here, I'm going to give you a tip. What if you develop a list of solutions you provide? Now, these have to be things that matter to them, but a list of solutions. Now, can you phrase questions that can connect their needs with your solutions? Earlier, I mentioned fear. Fear, needs, their challenges. Can your solutions provide support for them? What are some questions you can leverage to guide down that path? So I'm going to give you some example questions here. I'm not going to read through this whole list, but I'll read the first few. Here's some example leading questions. What would a successful ad campaign mean to your business? That's a pretty powerful question. You probably already know the answer to it. Now, if you woke up to a $30,000 credit line, what would you do? Well, if you've done your homework, you might know what they would spend that money on. You might have an idea. Maybe they've got some expansion they want to do. How's your current approach to customer acquisition impacted your business growth? What's your biggest challenge working from home? These are all leading questions that you probably know the answer to. But with that information, it allows you to talk about your solutions in a very impactful way. So let's look at the next type. So we talked about where we're going. Now, what do you want to know? See, these are the questions that we really want answers to. And if we get these answers, it gives us an opportunity to talk intelligently about our offering. These are investigative questions. I encourage everybody to put their Sherlock Holmes hat on and ask the right investigative questions. These are some of the most powerful investigative questions. They uncover real needs. And with that uncovering their needs, it gives you an opportunity to really serve. So an example is, what's your current marketing budget? So here's some additional investigative questions. I want to take a minute here, and you can read through some of these, but I want you to think about your own business. I'll read a couple of these for you to just kind of plant the seed on what an investigative question might look like. What pain points have you encountered with your current suppliers? What's your current approach to customer retention? How effective has that been? What factors are limiting your ability to scale your business? These are the types of investigative questions that might give you real answers that allow you to tap into and connect with them at a very important level. So take just a minute to see if you can come up with an investigative question. Like I said, you can always come back and revisit this. I encourage you to take a screenshot of these investigative questions. Now, an interesting thing about investigative questions and leading questions, there could be some overlap. What might be a leading question with one client might be investigative in another situation. The whole point is you're either driving the conversation where you want to take it, or you're uncovering their needs so you can provide real solutions. We've all heard that why matters. We need to have a why in our business. Why are we doing this? Why are we making all these sacrifices? Our why matters. But you know what? Their why matters too. When you're connecting and engaging with somebody that's a new prospect, a new potential client, their why matters. It's an opportunity for a true emotional connection. These are what I call empathy questions. Empathy questions allow us to really relate at an emotional level. If we can connect with them on an emotional level, this is where we have a real opportunity to win. Because I said earlier that all buying decisions take place at an emotional level. So an example of an empathy question is, are those recent layoffs I heard about on the news impacting your workload? This is something they may be stressing about. This is something they may be really struggling with. Now you've connected with them on something that is personal to them. It's an area of fear. Now you have an opportunity to really connect. So think about your own business. Are there empathy questions you can ask? So take just a moment out, and then I'll show some example empathy questions. All right, here's another shot you can take a screenshot of. Empathy question examples. How has stress of managing your business affected your personal well-being? What challenges are you facing in balancing your work and family life? How has the economic uncertainty impacted your confidence in making business decisions? And what's been the hardest part of leading your team through recent changes? These are opportunities to really connect at an emotional level on areas that they may be facing massive stress and fear that you now have an opportunity to provide real solutions and real answers for. Or if nothing else, you've now built a connection, you've built rapport, and they trust you. So now on the next one, I'm going to ask you to maybe slow down, proceed with caution. This isn't for everyone, and it's not for every situation. But one of the greatest opportunities is what I call gently poking the bear. These are instigating questions. Now, instigating questions, the reason I say proceed with caution is instigating questions focus on their pain, but it's a real opportunity to connect. Now, sometimes they may be sensitive about these things. Sometimes it may be you're asking a question that really you have to be kind of far along in the relationship to be able to ask. You know, if you're asking somebody about their budgets and things like that, well, it's maybe not a conversation for their first call, but it's a real opportunity. So a great example of an instigating question is, shouldn't your vendor have caught that mistake? How are they handling it? So now all of a sudden you're touching on something that may just be a real sensitive point. You're talking about the vendor that they're working with. You're obviously trying to win that business away from that vendor. And now all of a sudden you're tapping into something that may be a sensitive topic, but it's a topic no less where you have the opportunity to really build trust. So let's take a second out and think about some instigating questions. And here's another shot you can take a screenshot of. But for your own business, think about, what do you think is holding your business back from reaching its full potential? Why do you think competitors are achieving growth faster than your company? Now, these are questions that by nature could be a little sensitive. It's like you have to know your audience. You don't necessarily want to ask these of everyone, but when you do, it's obviously an opportunity to really connect. What risks are you avoiding that could actually lead to significant growth? Why haven't you explored new markets or revenue streams yet? You're gently poking the bear, but in a way that allows you to really build trust and build rapport with them. So think about your own business. Let's take just a moment and write down an instigating question. So what's the point of this? Where does this lead us? Well, I argue that this whole exercise, the idea of becoming better at asking questions, allows us to find a place of discovery, place of opportunity, place of real connection. But also, the more we do this, the more it becomes part of our nature, the better chance we have of leading to mastery. So let's look real quickly at what does question mastery look like. Well, there's a few things you can do to become better at asking questions. You know, I gave you 4 question types today. I gave you leading questions, investigative, empathy, and instigating. That's 4 question types. What if you create a list of relevant questions? Just start with 5 each. Get comfortable with the idea of using these. Maybe you start tracking what works and what doesn't. Do some role playing with a colleague or a coach. What if you record those conversations? You know, when I lived in San Francisco years ago, I was an outside sales rep, and I used to record my conversations over the phone, not for any purposes other than myself, but I'd listen to those recordings in the car. And even with the windows up, I'd pull up alongside a car and I'd be so embarrassed thinking, oh my gosh, they must know what I'm listening to. It was really challenging. But over time, I also started to see where I was connecting with people and where I was losing them. If you get better at asking questions in your daily life, it'll actually make you a much better networker. And if there's one thing that stands out above all, I ask you to become curious. Now, as we close this, I've asked you to do some work today, and I'm asking you to do further work on this because this is an area where I think everyone can master engagement. They can become much better. And it does take work. But there's a philosophy. If you train hard, you can fight easy. This was Tiger Woods' perspective on preparation and discipline. So I want to thank Alignable today. Boss Academy is a community that I'm very proud of. We've been around since 2014, and today we're supported by some amazing sponsors. I just want to give a quick shout out to some of the people who support us at Manatee, Master Book Builders, Merrill Research, Michelle Lee Coaching, Pro Video Pages, and Winning Press Release. Randy, I just want to thank you for this opportunity, and I'll turn it back over to you.